Hello, everybody.
Hello, how are we doing?
How are we? We are good. I saw a TikTok the other day and I really wanted to talk to you about it because it just made me realize like how much change and growth we go through in life, which like to me change has always been presented as like a negative thing. And in this TikTok, this girl was basically talking about how when you grow up, your family and the people closest to you end up being the ones that know you the absolute least. And it's mainly because the idea that they hold on to this version of you that existed at one point in time, but doesn't necessarily exist anymore. And when you do grow up around a certain group of people, they do develop their own perceptions of you. And I feel like anyone does at any stage of life. Like whenever you meet someone new, that also blows my mind as I saw a separate quote a different time where it said, every single person that you have ever come in contact with has a different perspective or perception of you as an individual. Like they see you as a completely different person just based on their interaction with you, how much you've decided to share with them, like the side of your personality that you've shown, your interests that you share and things like that. But when it comes to like actually growing and evolving in life, I found like just watching that TikTok and then like assessing my own kind of growth, I found that sometimes that does kind of hold you back when you surround yourself with people that see you from a certain perspective, and you almost feel like that pressure to stay that way and that pressure to not evolve and not change, and maybe a bit of shame for like changing opinions on things. And maybe you believed in something one time when you were significantly younger and had less knowledge and experience of the world, and then for you to openly say a few years later, actually this is what I believe now and it's actually the opposite, that can be, I don't know about you, but I feel sometimes I felt like a lot of shame attached to that, because I'm like, now I'm contradicting myself and I'm being a hypocrite, and once I believe something so strongly and now I don't anymore. So I wondered if you kind of ever had those experiences yourself, and like if you have, how you've been more comfortable in yourself and confident to be like, this is a new version of me, and you may have this version of me that exists in your head, but I'm still me as I am right now, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is that your family or like the people you grew up with when you were younger know like the version of you that's changed the most, I guess, because of how many times I guess you will have evolved from the person you were then. And I'm trying to think, like, as you were talking, like, have I ever attached shame to change? Because when you said at the beginning of the episode that you've always kind of perceived change in like a negative way, I was thinking myself, like, have I done that? And I feel like I haven't, because a lot of things in my life when I was younger kept changing, whether I instigated that change or not. So I've always seen change as like a challenge. But at the same time, I think what you're talking about in terms of like actually changing your opinion or maybe your belief system, based on who you're surrounded with, I feel like those things, like your opinions and your belief systems, and amongst any other parts of like your character or personality, they're almost like 90% informed by whoever's around you at that time, like a very contextual influence. So then, because that's informed by your environment, if you decide to like on your own, like off your own back, go against something like that, then your environment's going to tell you that's wrong. And then there is shame attached to changing your mind about that. And I think, like, if I think about the most negative time I felt around change is probably when I'm like trying to pivot my career, or like trying to like even start my social media channels, you know, like those were the times where I really felt like doing something slightly different or slightly unexpected compared to what my current circle would have done. That's when I've attached a sense of shame or like embarrassment to those decisions. And those decisions have like, you know, the whole phrase around like people will bring you back down to the level that they see you as. Mm-hmm. And I think those feelings of like shame and like negativity come from the feeling of being like pulled back down by your environment. I think we touched on it in like a previous episode as well, in terms of like how important your environment is on like your ability to probably just, you know, keep changing your mind and keep like stepping outside the status quo. But I don't know how to like it takes, I feel like it takes a lot of belief in yourself to change and grow despite your current environment kind of pulling you back down, because no one in this world is going to tell you that your change is right, or like the change is like it's going to be a good thing, and like you it's okay if you actually change your mind about something or change your opinion about something. One thing I definitely struggle with is changing my opinion about something, and like that like the conflict inside where I'm like, everyone knows me as someone who believes this thing. I can't change my mind about it now.
Yeah, I have to stick with it. But it's also things like, so say for example, growing up, I was super shy and like introverted, and I was very much like a yes man, like the type of person that was just super agreeable, like always wanted to keep the peace. As I've grown older, I've learned social skills, as in not that I didn't have them before, but I am more confident than I ever was before. But I almost have felt sometimes, and this can be like in social circles as well, like with friends that maybe I knew like years ago in my shy days when I just didn't speak until I was spoken to, and I was just so much more shy than I am now. When people get shocked, or like when people are like surprised by your like new self, or like how you are currently, that also affects me and makes me think that, oh, is this like not who I am then? Or is this like,
Oh, should I not be doing this?
yeah, is it like wrong that like I've changed basically? So that's kind of also an element of why I feel sometimes, not that anyone said anything directly, but just like indirect like expectations of people kind of lead me down that like path of thinking, well then what does it mean to be me? Like, should I, it's I guess that case of like living up to people's expectations and who they think you should be based on their experiences with you. And then when you do move beyond that, is that wrong? And is that like not really me? Like, what's the real you at that point? Is it the new version of you, or are you masking what was before? Like, I really sometimes struggle with that.
I have a controversial question to ask you off the back of that.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's like slightly influenced by, and I'm speaking about myself here as well, so if you see other people changing, do you then think they're masking their real selves, or they're like not being their true selves, and that's why you therefore think if you like grow and develop, you're not sure whether you're just like masking or actually becoming like a different version of yourself as well? Because I feel like a lot of what I criticize in others is a lot of how I criticize myself as well. And I wonder if that's like something that's influencing you a little bit. It's like not just a you problem, and like you're not allowing yourself to grow and like have a new belief system. It's more like you actually see that as something wrong with society. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think so, because I'm trying to think if I've actually like ever clocked that in someone else, because I don't think I have. Like, if I was to see someone change for the better, if they change for the worse, then yeah, I think those things like, what the hell's wrong with you? But if they change for the better, or if they were like more confident in themselves, I don't think I would think that they were masking. I just feel like in myself, I don't know, I just feel like, am I being inauthentic? Or I don't know, it's a weird one. But I get what you're saying, because I've also made a post similar to this online, where when you feel like people are going to judge you, and when you feel like people are being judgmental towards you, or you stop yourself from doing things for fear of judgment, I've questioned whether that's a case of you automatically going to judge someone else for doing that same thing, or if you were going to be the person that see someone else doing something different, would you see that in a judgmental way, which is why you think people would do that to you. So I get that perspective, because I think that on certain things, but when it comes to people changing, I genuinely don't think I've experienced or seen that, like, or acknowledged it. Maybe it's happened, but I've never like maybe been observant enough to notice that they changed that drastically. Because you know in yourself, like when you used to operate a certain way, or you used to have certain beliefs, but you don't necessarily pay that much attention to how much someone else has changed over a period of time. And there's not really that many people that I've known for an extensive period of time to know, oh, when they were a kid or a teenager, they were like this and now they're like this. So I feel like it's a bit different. But the only people I would say, probably like siblings and stuff, I feel like they're the people that you would know, you'd be the closest to identify that.
Yeah. I actually find with my siblings, it's sometimes more difficult to change for the better because they're also so attached to like the version I am at one point in time. So they're always like, my siblings are always the one who are like, oh, like if I, for example, with like TikToks, they're like, oh, I can tell you're putting a bit of a voice on, or like I can tell,
really?
like, yeah, I can tell like you're trying to like hold back your like you're like, my sister always says like you should just be like full on dork, because when I'm with my sister I'm very like stupid. Yeah. Like very silly, but I obviously I kind of subconsciously hold that back when I'm making TikToks.
It is interesting though, because I feel like we all do have faces for things.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is your professional face, there is your like comfortable, like when you're around the closest people to your face. So maybe there is always an element of this idea of like you are switching up, like who, like when you, the way you present yourself on camera will be very different to how you are just in natural life, unless you get to that point where you are literally just picking up the camera like mid-flow of a conversation and you're just carrying on, which is very rare to do. Like normally people plan out their videos and they know what they're going to say in advance, and you know they are very strategic in what they post as content online. So it will automatically come across as like a little bit different to if you were just saying it in a relaxed setting, like with your siblings or something. But then I guess in that sense, then, if you are always displaying like these different versions of yourself and in different scenarios, then it should just be widely accepted that people are going to change. And that's why I feel like it is a little bit of a stigma, the idea of changing.
Yeah, what is it like more the idea of just like not being consistent in like everywhere you show up?
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah. I'm wondering as well, like, see earlier when you said, oh, when you, what was it like when you got a bit more confidence, you felt like it might not be authentic to you. What were those feelings? Like, did you just feel like when you were in situations where you were more confident, you were like, oh my God, am I putting this on?
Yeah, because it wasn't like a... So sometimes I do feel genuinely like a lot more confident in certain situations than I do in others. So I feel like maybe I just had a little bit of an identity crisis. Like, am I faking it? Like, am I actually a confident person? Or am I just like faking it in this moment? Like, I just couldn't actually tell.
You know what that actually also reminds me of? I remember when I was like researching imposter syndrome and those kinds of feelings, and I came across a perspective on imposter syndrome is that you don't actually have imposter syndrome. It's just that, like, sometimes it's just that you're sometimes in environments that make you feel like you need to hold elements of yourself back, or you need to question elements of yourself. So again, coming back to like your environment, where like maybe in some situations where you don't feel as confident, it's not you being like, oh, like being back and forth between this confident person and this shy person. It's actually your environment that's like making you like think twice about whether you can fully bring your walls down or fully like speak your true mind, which is not necessarily like an internal problem. It's more like an external problem itself, which I think is interesting, because then it comes back to, well, if you feel like you're being inauthentic, maybe flip the question around and think, am I putting myself in situations that make me feel like I can be confident all of the time? And how often are you putting yourself in those situations? Because if you're doing that 90% of the time, and then you're just like conditioning yourself to be less confident, then the times you feel more confident, you're going to be like, oh my God, who is this person? But actually it's the real you.
That's true. Do you know what? I think I only started noticing the difference with that is when I started socials, because I was so surprised when people would like come up to me and be like, you look like such a confident person and you're so, you know, like the way you present yourself online is just so like super outgoing and extroverted and like a really confident person. But I, in real life, was not like, I'm very much an introvert, like more so. So then I was so shocked by the perception that people were getting of me, even though that was the real me. So then I think that's when it started becoming like, oh, but now when I meet people in person and I don't match that energy, or I don't come across in that way because that's not really who I am 100% of the time, then like, which one is me? And is that, are people gonna like, then is that me faking online? But it wasn't, because that was just how I was.
Actually, this reminds me of a point when I was at your wedding and I spoke to, I think, two of your friends that you invited that I met on the table that we were at. And I felt, and just generally at your wedding, and like when I'm around you, I feel extremely like myself, like all the walls are down in general. And I think because of that, then when I meet your friends, I'm like, still like the walls are still down. There's like an element of trust, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I met two of your friends and I was so like, I felt so relaxed and I felt like such a like different version of myself. And I remember actually thinking during your wedding, I was like, these two girls are gonna think that I'm this like laid back, like, I don't know, like funny, like okay person, when 90% of the time I'm like super reserved, don't really talk that much. You know what I mean? Like, I was just wondering, are they going to think if we meet again, will I be able to keep
That
the
same
charade
version.
up? Yeah.
The amount of times I felt like that is just, yeah, like, can I match that same version of myself that I've given to someone before? Because sometimes it isn't like, but maybe everyone feels like that then. Because even the most extroverted people, they obviously have like down days or times where they're not
Like,
in full
extroverted people
form.
though, they like,
They feed off that though, don't they?
yeah, I feel like I've never seen someone who's extroverted actually be fully down and quiet. Like, I feel like they are just thriving all the time when they're socializing,
Because
they
when
just
they're
don't.
around people, that's their like charging time.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like my charging time is when you don't see me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm not around.
Yeah.
That's so true. Maybe it's an like, introvert thing then. Like,
What, in terms of like
that type
changing?
of personality is that type of person that has those like questions in their own head and like being able to match energy and,
Oh, like
you know,
overthinking.
show up in a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I bet even the fact that this is a freaking episode in itself is just showing us that we're just overthinking everything.
True. Nobody else has these problems except
Yeah.
us, because we're just
Any extroverts
overanalyzing.
listening just gonna be like, guys, just chill out.
Relax.
But how? Because that's it. I don't think I'm ever gonna change the way I am, like in terms of like. And you know what? Actually, I've just had a thought. I think I definitely pressure myself to be the same person that I think I present to specific people, like how I first met them. Like your two friends, I feel like I'm gonna pressure myself to be that person if I ever meet them again. And I definitely have friends where I'm like, okay, they met me via social, so like I present as this like non-corporate person. But then my corporate friends from work, I definitely have like a wall up around seeming like put together, professional, knowledgeable, not being too like laid back and stuff, if you know what I mean, as well. So I don't know how I could detach from doing that. But I think part of detaching from being able to do that is just having confidence that like people will, it's probably a people pleaser element in this, like having the confidence that people will still like me however I show up with them.
Yeah, it's interesting because is that not like, is that the way it should be, or should it be that you are just like one? Because I feel like we're all multifaceted, like we all have different sides of us, and so there's no way that you can be the exact same with everyone. You have different levels of relationships with different people, so it's surely natural to like have different experiences or like show different sides of yourself to different people, maybe.
Yeah. And maybe that is the difference between like your true friends, like the friends that you are planning on loyally keeping around for the rest of your life, versus maybe like contextual friends as well. Because I definitely have a lot of like contextual friends. I also don't want this to sound like mean, but you know, like friends that you made in very specific contexts, but that you wouldn't connect with on any kind of deeper level as well. I don't know if this is just me showing how I like make my reservations around people, because I'm very particular these days around who I decide to like connect with on a deeper level.
Same.
And then that then develops into like a long-term friendship. So I wonder if that is the difference there. Like it's between like the types of friends that you have, and then that's how you overthink. Because I definitely, when I'm with you and when I'm with like a handful of other people, I don't think about how I'm showing up.
That's a really good point. It's like the hierarchy of friends, right? That's yeah, I guess the older you get, you maybe do start thinking about those things a bit more. Like I've talked about before, how I always used to see everyone as a best friend. So I just show up in the same way. Whereas now, it's also about preserving your energy as well, I think. I'm not going to lie, but some people, they don't need that level of energy from me. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to give your full self to everyone.
Yeah.
So maybe it's an element of that. You can be selective. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm also thinking, like, when I'm with my mum, I am very conscious about how different I am from the version of myself that she's used to, that lived at home as well. And I'm very conscious about like I feel very active in the way that I try not to be the person that was like an 18-year-old.
Oh, so you fight against that?
In my head, I have to really
consciously
think through, like, especially when you're just talking about like a dysfunctional family background and like being triggered by certain things. Like I really have to like work through in my head, like, okay, don't act like this, don't behave like this, because it's not you anymore, if that makes sense.
See, that's interesting.
But it's very in my face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was thinking is like, yeah, I guess when it comes to dysfunctional family, it's probably a different story altogether of how you would change and evolve as a person. Because you almost like, I feel like as you grow up, when you notice those toxic patterns and you notice the dysfunction, like at least in my case, I've tried everything to be the opposite of that, and like recognize in myself like how it's affected me and how I've like carried on toxic traits, for example. And you don't want to then go back and then become that same person again. So that makes sense that you'd be like hyper aware of how you're behaving to not go back to that like person that you were, who was like immersed in all of that. But that's really interesting that you say that, because do you think, or has your mum commented on like you being a different person and that being a negative thing? Really?
Yeah, she's made comments about me acting different. Like for a few years she'd kind of just comment like that it's an act, or she's used slightly ruder words before, which I will not
Oh, no.
I will not go into, but it's been like, if we go back to the TikTok that you were speaking about at the beginning, from that aspect, it's definitely been hard for me to like, it's almost like I'm like battling a case, or like fighting for myself to be like, okay, it's like I have changed. Like there's no front that's being put on to seem a certain way, or like
I've just evolved.
Yeah, it's just like, this is just like, it's been 10 years since I moved out now, so like that's 10 years of change, a lot of which she's actually not even witnessed, because during those 10 years I haven't seen her like extremely often, you know. So I've seen her the most in the last 2 years, I would say. So maybe even eight of those years she only saw me a couple of times, which means there's like even less or even more change that's happening that you don't see as well. So there was a lot more convincing to do in terms of like, well, this is me. Like,
So have you struggled then to like keep your like your new self in the presence of like your parents or your mum because of like those comments? Or have you found yourself when you're in that environment, do you revert back more to like fit that mold, or are you quite sure of like carrying on battling with it and making it known that this is the new version of you?
I feel like I'm quite sure in battling. I think before I would just kind of like not revert back, but like not be so offended that the change seems so like crazy. But now I think now as well, because I've stuck to my guns, the comments are less, like they come up less often. So there is like now a mutual understanding that, you know, I've changed. And oh, you know what's really annoying as well? I think the fact that I'm approaching 30 is been like a weird reason for them to be like, oh, she is an adult now. Like, of course she's changed. Whereas when I was like in my early 20s, mid 20s, it was like, oh, you're still a child that's rebelling against us. Even though I had moved out and I was in my early 20s, you know what I mean? Like, I was still I was fairly independent, pretty much entirely independent because I was forcing the independence. And it's only now like this age, which is such a milestone in society for like marking being an adult, that they've kind of let go now, and they're like, oh yeah, of course, like of course she does her own thing, of course she's like an adult and thinks in a different way to us, you know what I mean? So that's also been kind of weird. Yeah.
So I guess it's an age thing rather than like your proof of showing before that you were independent.
Yeah, I don't
already.
Yeah, I feel like the evidence has not won any kind of case.
No need for the evidence. What proof?
Yeah.
What's the point in that?
Yeah, just wait till my 30th and then they're like, okay, it's okay now.
You're an adult. You tick that box. Yeah. That's kind of great. That's interesting though, because then it does make me think. Because I'm in a stage now where like I've just removed myself from a lot of situations just so I can really get a hold of like, okay, who am I? And I don't want to be triggered, and I don't want to have any reason to revert back to old ways, because I'm trying to, not that I'm forcing myself to become a new person, but I do want to like change things and evolve. I feel like that's good for everyone. That's why I get a bit, I'm just like, why is that seen as a negative thing? Or why do people always feel like they're losing their grasp on you if you are changing? And it's like, it's more about the other person then in that scenario, I think, than about you and the fact that you're changing. It's just that they feel like you're moving further away from them, and that's what they can't handle.
Yeah, I think that phrasing you just used is very interesting there. Like, oh, they feel like they're losing their grasp on you. I think that's very telling in itself. Like, that's why people are holding you back, because if they can't,
they take it personally.
Yeah, it's like you're like almost sometimes a show of how, not controlling, but like how influential someone is as well. And I really like how you've said that like you actually removed yourself from situations to figure out who you are, because I think I've had, and it probably drives a lot of like crises that people have in their mid-20s or even their 20s in general, when I've had so many moments in my life where I really look inward and I have to really think hard about who I actually am. Like, what opinions of mine are my opinions? Like, how is my taste in music? Like, where does that come from? The TV shows I watch, where does that come from? And I really question everything. And I think removing yourself from situations is such a like respectable way to go about figuring that out, because you'll never figure that out if you're constantly around, especially if you have like, if you're the type of person with like loads of different friend groups and stuff. I feel like it's even harder to figure out what is you.
Yeah, that's true. I'm also one of those people that have friends from like every stage of life, but none of them are like in the same group, and they're all like individual friendships. And because they're from different stages of life, it's like I was a different person at each of those stages. So what does that mean for like who I am right now and how that all like fits together? But no, I second that. I think it's so important to have that time to, I think it's only really important if you haven't had that chance to actually like listen to your own voice and your own opinions, and like had that safe space to figure things out for yourself prior to you having to force that, because I'm sure there are people that like do have that. So in that case, it's not necessary to isolate yourself.
Yeah. But from all your different friend groups, have you, or like the friends from different stages of your life, do you feel like you've ever reverted back to a person that you were when you met them?
Do you know what's interesting about each of the friends that have remained is the ones that I'm still in contact with or have that connection to are the ones that I could always be my authentic self around. As in, like, it was the people that like I don't think I've changed that much. It's only like certain parts of myself I'm more comfortable with revealing now, like being a bit more outgoing and outspoken, and just being that like less like in my shell kind of person, which I was a lot more when I was younger. So the friendships that have survived are the ones that I was able to do that from the beginning, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's really
in a
nice.
friendship setting, yeah, it's not a case of like, oh, I feel myself reverting, because I feel like I was all there. It was always a safe space there that I was like myself and comfortable. So there was no need for, because I wouldn't be able to keep up friendships now if I felt like I had to be a different person around them. I don't have the energy for that. Like I just wouldn't have worked, and I would not. I just wouldn't keep in contact with people like that, because I just wouldn't. I wouldn't see the purpose of it, and I would just know that it would be so draining. It'd be so pointless, because it would have no value to my life to like go back to meet someone just for me to like revert to an old version of myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what? That's so interesting because I like literally yesterday I downloaded the like my human design or like human design. There's like an app, and like figured out my chart thing, and the app has like a tips section for like just random elements of your life that correlate to your human design and how you should like go about it. And I was looking through the friendships one yesterday, and it said in the friendships one for my human design, I need to be okay with having friends that aren't my cup of tea, but it doesn't mean I have to like cut them off or never see them or feel any negative emotions around them. The tip was basically like, it's okay for you to just see them when you see them, even just say no to seeing them. Like, that's fine because my human design type attracts very specific kinds of people, which I thought was very interesting. It was basically just telling you, like, the tip was basically saying, like, don't attach yourself to, like, what you have to do about people that aren't your, like, are, yeah. Yeah, just let it be and, like, don't worry about that. So that's interesting because I feel like you do that quite naturally. But I feel like you're also quite empowered. Like, you're quite an empowered person because when you do things, like I've noticed, you don't really not feel bad about them in a bad way, but you're kind of like, okay, it's one and done. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah.
I don't know where that came from, because normally like I I'm an overthinker as well, so
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well, this whole episode is us overthinking. I'm not gonna.
that's just our title. An hour of us overthinking everything. But yeah, it happens that I am a major overthinker, which we've established in this episode. But I don't know, there'll just be points where I'm just so sure of my decision on things, and I just know, like, and maybe it's just a gut feeling. I'm just like, I know I'm right, and I know that's how.
I really want you to do the human design thing.
I want to do that too. Is that an app?
Yeah, it's well, I've downloaded an app because there's this woman Jenna Zoe. She's like a human design expert, and she's got an app and stuff.
Okay.
But you can just do like free charts. Like I'm sure the chart that she does. So if you do like, I think it's called My Human Design or something. The chart is free. But I'm wondering if you're like you've maybe got similar elements to mine because I'm a manifesting generator, and so there's 5 types, and there's a manifesting generator, but there's also manifester and there's also generator. And the part of the generator that I have is the fact that we're really driven by gut feeling, and we need to like basically I need to be way more in tune with my gut than I currently am because I'm extremely indecisive. And it's interesting that you're like very sure about your, and you know what, even when people like, I listen to a lot of self-development podcasts and stuff, and people talk about like acting on their gut and like just knowing, you just like know something is right or wrong. Like I've listened to episodes where people have been like, I knew that I was going to launch this business, it just felt right, like an entire business they were like launched off the back of their gut. And it's so interesting like how right or wrong I guess something can feel just from like I don't know, like brain waves, I guess is what
I
it
guess
is,
it's just
right?
a feeling. But I feel like the step before that is if you're someone that has, like, I don't know, grown up like questioning yourself, like in your own decisions, then I feel like you have to chip away at that first. Otherwise, you're going to just have anxiety about everything, which I think is what I did for a long time. So I didn't trust my own decisions on things, and I didn't trust that I could like make a good decision on my own without consulting like other people and without making sure that other people approved of that decision.
Yeah, I'm
So
very
I feel
similar
like
now. Yeah.
because I always felt like, well, if I make a decision on my own and then I get it wrong, like all hell is gonna break loose, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather someone else like, gave that approval and that nod towards, yeah, that's the right thing to do, and then I'd go ahead and do it. But if you then you can't really act on gut feelings like that because you're constantly just waiting on someone else's gut feeling essentially, or what they think is right. So I feel like over time that's something that I've had to chip away at, and just, I guess, just get more in tune with like what I feel is right, and be okay with things going wrong sometimes or not turning out how you expect them to. Because when you obsess over things like having to be right, and then the idea of like being wrong being the end of the world, I feel like that is when you struggle to then tune into your gut feeling and know that that's like, because ultimately like anything that you put like your full energy and you are really sure of in the manifesting world, that stuff's gonna come true anyway.
Yeah.
So realistically it all ties in, and it's like, well, I might have this gut feeling, but because I've told myself that is a gut feeling and that's something that I'm meant to be doing, automatically you've made up your mind that thing is what's meant to happen. That is what is gonna be like, it's gonna be successful when you try it.
Yeah.
And then it works out because that's what you've already like decided in your mind. But I feel like, yeah, you sometimes, if you're the type of personality to second guess yourself, it is very hard to listen to your gut feeling, and you do have to kind of undo that first.
I'm definitely that person. I actually don't even think it's personality based. I think it's literally like, what were people saying around you when you're growing up? And
Exactly
like,
that.
yeah, maybe similarly for you, I had a lot of like, you have to make the right decision. Like you can't do anything on your own. And it's not necessarily like I wasn't trusted. It was more like the world wasn't trusted to be right to me if I made a decision. Like just because of the background my parents have grown up with like instability, like requiring the right move to be made at every single point, a decision point. Like they didn't trust the world to look after us regardless of what decision we made. So I think that was that kind of like belief was put onto me probably by accident, in terms of like, okay, well, you're not a good decision maker because if you don't make the right decision, the right thing isn't going to happen to all of us collectively. And it's really hard to work through that, like the human design stuff, that now that I've like probably the last like month and a half I've gotten really into it in terms of like just understanding what mine is. I have been trying to figure out like, okay, well, how can I actually learn to trust my gut more? Because I get so, like I've mentioned it on previous episodes, like my inability to make decisions sometimes is so like consuming, and like it feels like such a cloud over me sometimes that I really want to get out of that. And I'm trying to literally do simple things like with my yogurt bowls, what do I want to put on top of them? And like if my gut says chocolate, I'm just going to do it without like, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to like trust the little things. And the app actually even said like, you don't have to make big decisions. You have to just be like, almost like create an awareness around like, oh, can you even sense what your gut is feeling? And like, can you even sense like what is a good feeling and what is a bad feeling? And just start getting used to creating awareness around that feeling in the first place, rather than like having to act on it immediately. And I like what you said about kind of like trusting in the fact that even if something goes like quote unquote wrong, the world's still not going to end. And I think I struggle with that as well, especially in like restaurants. I've definitely spoken about this in previous episodes, but like picking the wrong thing and then having to like watch everyone else eat the right thing, even though I knew that I could have ordered that. Yeah, it's like stuff like that I get very consumed by, and I need to just convince myself that like, even if something goes wrong, the decision it's not the end of the world. It's just more like, yeah, I just have to like
it's a
trust
learning
myself.
lesson, isn't it?
Yeah. Just
so what's the difference between the human design test and the personality test that we do?
Do you mean like the INFJ stuff?
Yeah.
I think so. With human design, it's like And they're probably quite similar, to be honest. Like, I feel like human design is more based on your astrology, because mine popped out after
Oh,
I put my birthday, the time I was born, and the place I was born, and it gives me my chart. Whereas I feel like the INFJ thing was like based after you had to answer
the
loads of
questions.
scenarios. Yeah, scenario based questions. So it's more behavioral, I guess, versus
Hmm.
this is like it tells you how you should make decisions. It tells you like how you should eat food, like not specifically, but like it's like your digestion and nutritional like preferences based off of your personality type, I think. How you should make relationships, how you should manifest, which I thought that was a really interesting one for me because I'm a like non-specific manifester. I think you can either be a specific or a non-specific one. And it's all been just really validating for me because I'm like I can relate to everything obviously because it's my human design. But
Yeah.
I'm a non-specific manifester, which just means that like it's okay for me to have a general idea of like my big like goals and dreams. I don't need that. I've seen a lot of TikTok manifestation coaches and stuff say like you should write down, you should like visualize the exact car you want, like the weather on the day you're gonna buy it, your outfit on the day, like the very specific
Put yourself
elements.
into that, yeah,
Yeah, and it's like I've always
scenario.
struggled with that because like I'll do it. Like I've done the vision boards and the like lists where I'm getting super specific, but for me, I forget the specifics after like a week or two, and I've always thought in my head like I'm such a bad visualization person. Like I'm really bad at manifesting. I have to really bring my goals to the forefront all the time, but I've always had a really good general idea of like what I want for my life and like what I want for myself. And the manifestation specificity that human design provides was very validating in that like I actually it's okay for me to have a general idea as long as I keep remembering that or I keep manifesting on that general idea and like have that in
Hmm.
mind. So it is, yeah, it's super useful. I think I'm really really keen to find out what yours is because I want to see
I'm
if it's
keen
mine. Yeah.
too. I really want to do it, but I don't know if I know my time of birth. That's the only thing.
Do you have your
Like,
birth certificate?
no. Oh, it would be on there.
I don't know. I'm just assuming. I'm trying to think of ways you could find out.
That's interesting. I'll have to try and find out. I think I know the like roundabout, but I feel like stuff like that has to be pretty accurate for it to spit out like the right stuff for you, know?
Yeah, I had to ask very specifically.
I'll try to figure it out anyway. But that's a good thing for people to be aware of anyway, that those things exist to help like validate the way you think and behave, and like it is all kind of pre-existing like in your DNA, I guess, the way you are. So it's nice to be validated in that sense and feel like there's a reason for why I'm different to other people around me, and it doesn't mean that it's bad, and it doesn't mean that me changing or having different views or different ways of doing things is wrong just because it's not the same as whoever's in my immediate circle at that time.
Yeah, definitely. I think like behaviors, opinions, apart from like heavily political ones, I feel like there's really no way for something to be right or wrong in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
how you change and evolve as a person. So I think we even need, like, I need to listen to this back and be like, look, it's fine.
Take a chill pill.
Take a chill pill, take a personality quiz, and then feel okay about everything.
Yeah. Just be okay with you.
So, thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please give us a little rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you're listening there. And if you don't know, we actually post our video podcast on YouTube as well. So give us a little subscribe and leave us a comment as well. If you've done a human design quiz, let both of us know what your human design like type or energy type is. And let's bond over that. But yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.